Hi, I'm Dr. Claire Steppen, and I'm here to teach you a little bit about Cognitions of Choice, a philosophy for living. The system here is really designed to help people learn to make healthy choices. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my background here. I was a psychologist for 30 some years at this point in my life, and I've been an educator in many different settings. University, college, community college. I'm the founding and executive director of Coaching Choice College. I'm a certified natural health professional and a certified drug and alcohol counselor in several states and internationally. I'm a national board certified counselor and I'm board certified as a coach, have specialty designations in life, wellness, and business coaching. So this cross training has put me in the unique position to be able to offer the opportunity to work with many different professionals in teaching them about cognition and in specific cognitions of choice. All right. So the idea behind the cognitions of choice is not only to provide a philosophy for living, but to help people understand a little bit more about how cognition works and to teach them that there are some options, in making choices and that we make many different types of choices in life. And so sometimes we need a little assistance in trying to figure out what's the best approach in decision making. Because as we know at this point, if we have too many decisions to make, that we can become overwhelmed. And so the idea is that wellness is a choice, and that no matter what the situation we're in, even if we're struggling with a health condition, we still have the opportunity to make a choice in regards to how we want to approach treatment or what choices we want to make ourselves in regard to our situation. So, Cognitions of Choice is a system of learning that is meant to empower you to create options for wellness. And it's designed with the idea that choice is key to being able to function at our highest level of wellness. And the cognitions of choice are basically a guide, to be used in decision making process. And they're thought of as traits or dispositions that we can develop. And the more we have access to these types of traits and dispositions, the easier it is to make choices intelligently. So, cognition, most people think of it in terms of their thinking process, but it's really not just about the thoughts that we hold. It also incorporates the actions we take that are based on those thoughts. And it goes deeper because it includes our feelings and our beliefs. So, cognition connects to our emotions and looks at our values and also our personality traits. And so you see it from a much broader perspective under this definition. And so cognitions create the neural hot wiring that construct our feelings and our social perceptions that drive our life choices. They also guide our habits of being or the way we look at ourselves that designs our own philosophy for living. So this gives you an opportunity to uniquely not only make some changes, in a simple way, be problem oriented or problem, kind of an approach to problem solving, but it goes deeper than that. It allows you to have more of a solution focus. So we all have barriers in our thinking, and barriers can come about in many different ways. And these barriers can create obstacles to us getting what we want in life or becoming who we want to be, living the life that we want to live to the fullest. And barriers involve these obstacles that get in the way of us making healthy decisions. So there's many different ways they can occur. They're naturally occurring in an environment. Sometimes they're financially driven. There can be cultural barriers, social, emotional, that result in bias, and it can be towards gender. People with disabilities can be prejudiced against. Sometimes you see that in regards to the availability of services or the opportunities or lack thereof. The problem is with barriers is that they negatively impact our ability to have confidence or to have confidence about the choices that we make in our decision-making process. So I want to move into looking a little more about how we construct and create choice. And so today we'll talk about the difference between just constructing a choice and going to that deeper level of processing where we actually are involved in creating our choices. And so, for just teaching purposes, I look at choice in a levels model. And of course, it doesn't happen just that structured all the time, because everything is coming at us many different ways in life. And so things are really happening more in what I call a radial view or 360, kind of view or dimensional view, if you will. But at that very first level of processing, things are happening somewhat automatically. And this can, be involving thoughts that perhaps result in unhealthy, kind of outcomes for us. And it's kind of a linear process in that we think our thoughts connect to our feelings and that these feelings impact our behaviors and ultimately our beliefs in the way we believe ourselves to be. And so, like I said, it's influenced by logic. And so logic can be rational or irrational. And this approach really involves kind of single correct answers. And sometimes people get stuck in this process and begin to look at their life in this way where there's just one solution, and we can be taught to think this way as well. And so it's important to learn that there are other choices. The second level involves meta-processing, where we begin to think about our thoughts, or to go a little bit more deeply and think about our emotions and feelings. In automatic thoughts, the process, like I said, is just very linear and things come up automatically. And that our connection occurs, to our feelings that influence the behavior and ultimately our beliefs. But this could be rather a habitual kind of process, and so those thoughts, feelings, behaviors just occur very automatically. And sometimes people have a hard time identifying their thoughts or feelings. The more these patterns repeat themselves, the deeper they go and affect the constructs about how we believe ourselves to be. But when we go to meta-processing, it allows us to engage more of this radial view that I'm talking about. And, there is then a dialogue that occurs between our thoughts and our feelings. And we begin to mindfully engage in analyzing, strategizing, thinking critically about our thoughts and our emotions. So this really involves a relational process in which we are continually looking inward and outward as we process at deeper levels. In processing at the meta level, we go beyond simple habitual responding or linear thinking, and we actually engage our memory and our emotional response. So we open the brain to insert choice before responding and to consider alternative options, which allow us to recognize that we can change or we can make another choice. So I wanted to just talk a little bit here about the word emotions. So emotions are connected to the subcortical region of the brain. In that area is the amygdala, ventromedial, and prefrontal cortex. And you may have heard some about the amygdala. It's getting a lot of attention these days because it's involved in the processing of emotions. But more recently, we've learned that it's also involved in memory function. So it's very active in that primitive part of the brain that triggers reactions to threats or rewards. And it alerts us to be concerned or interested. We also have what are called complex emotions, and they're thought to be associated with cultural conditioning or associations that are in combination with the basic emotions, such as anger, sadness, fear, happiness, excitement, or tenderness. So emotions are released throughout our bodies, not just our brains, and our emotions are multidimensional, with the first response being the primary emotions, which is generally a basic emotion that can trigger secondary emotions or complex emotions or our feelings about our feelings. So we're moving into that meta region that I'm talking about here. So it's the secondary emotions that become problematic if not managed effectively because they can be fueled by negative self talk and take on long lasting effects. When we experience an emotion, our body is a state of physiological arousal, and how we evaluate the situation and how we perceive and interpret uh, this process will drive the manner in which we respond. And so complex emotions connect to our thought process and tend to be more lasting than our basic emotions, which tend to be short lasting, involuntary, and reactive. And the more this occurs, they're tied to our automatic nervous system. To learn more about this, you might look at some books written by McKay and Dufresne and also Bourne, Bourne. So you see here that I'm talking about our thoughts occurring first, and then we process the emotions, and be mindful to insert choice before we take action, and to have the opportunity to revise our beliefs. Now, I'm also, as I said, thinking about this in terms of a radial process. And so we have thoughts, and we proceed to emotions, but we also have emotions about our thoughts and thoughts about our emotions. And so it goes deeper into various layers, if you will, of processing. So this meta-processing allows us to engage a radial view. There's this dialogue, as I said, that goes on between our thoughts and our feelings. And we begin to think critically about our thoughts and feelings. And this is more of a relational process. And so it's much deeper than the linear process. And hopefully, you take the time to insert that choice and be able to create some alternative responses before just taking action. So in this next slide here, I'm looking at thoughts and feelings. Now, feelings are slightly different than emotions because they are connected to our emotions, but they originate in the neocortical region of the brain. So they're influenced by our beliefs, and our emotional experiences and memories tend to be more subjective. Um, Feelings happen in response to emotional and cognitive input. They become more saturated with neurochemicals, which cause them to have strong influence. They can be fueled by emotions, and so they're more long lasting and they really stay with us. And they embed in our perception, and it really affects a situation, a relationship, or our experience. And so they can experience a wide range of intensity. They can display more than one at a time. And it can make it difficult for us to be able to identify and sort out what we are feeling. But, some people recognize that for them, perhaps, feelings are more the stronger communicator than their thoughts, and they really respond at that level. At an increased level of awareness about feelings more than thoughts. And so this meta process, as I said, allows us to engage a radial view and have the dialogue that we want to have between our thoughts and feelings. It's relational, and we're continually looking inward and outward, go beyond that linear process, and we engage choice. A third level or deepest level of processing is the conscious choice process. And this is really moving in towards more of a creative process. And you'll see in a minute here as I talk about constructing views versus creating views. And so when we're in this phase of our processing, we're looking for a deeper kind of solution orientation where we have insight and we're more transcendent. And that, for some people under certain circumstances, the feelings may precede the thoughts. So this processing originates in a different place within the brain, but otherwise the processing is very much the same, in the situation of looking at how we process conscious thoughts. So conscious thought really develops as we experience this relational shift between our thoughts and feelings. And this occurs as we process and adapt and begin to consider divergent or multiple options and not just single solutions. So we engage a creative and insightful process, in this radial view and recognize that our patterns and our habits are connected to our meta processing, and we can initiate from a place of choice. So not only are we able to construct our view of self in the world, but we can take part in creating ourselves in worldview. So we become much more resilient and can cope and effectively deal with life stressors when we're able to rise above previously constructed views of choice. So our beliefs become more aligned with the authentic self view, and there's more consistency or congruence between how we think, how we feel, and how we act, because we're moving more freely within choice at this level. So I'm going to go back to the previous slides for a minute and just kind of draw your attention to something that I skipped over a little bit, and that was intentional. So you see here in level 1, I'm talking about inviting choice. Oftentimes people will come in and talk about needing to change something in their life, or a crisis situation, or something's occurred that has led them to pursue coaching or counseling. And so there are these barriers in our thought process that can obstruct the view, if you will, or prevent us from changing. And so the idea in using these cognitions of choice is to invite choice, to open the thinking and the feeling and the emotions to be able to have a different perspective about our choices. So when we move to that deeper level of meta processing, thinking about my thoughts or feelings or emotions, become more investigative. And so not only are we inviting choice, now we're becoming actively involved in our own process around choice. And we're starting to investigate what are our options, what kind of opportunities are there for us. And for some people, this can be quite a big step. It may be that there are skills deficits or areas where there's a lack of ability that they recognize, or may need some assistance or support in be able to investigate choices and opportunities. So when we get to that third level, we're looking at initiating choice. Very different process here to be able to assertively initiate a choice. And so we're looking at inviting, investigating, and initiating choice. Okay. So most of what happens in life is in response to the social constructs, or what systems or paradigms are in place that we come to believe as significant or important. And in many ways, this is good because it allows us some structure, it allows us some organization and ability, to control for things that are unexpected. But it can also have a side to it where it is kind of a situation that forces or limits outcomes, specifically in situations where people are in perhaps a socioeconomic lower environment, and when I say that, I don't mean that in terms of judgment, I mean it in terms of the perspective of economics and how these things get defined, that sometimes people will judge people based on the economic situation that they're born into. And there is the thinking that we will be stuck within that system wherever we were born. That's where we will stay. Even if we make life changes, it's like a rubber band effect. We'll come back to that socioeconomic level that we were born into, which will define our societal position. And what I'm posing here is that that is untrue, or we don't have to buy into that paradigm or system of thinking if we open the channel to pursue a wider view of how we construct choice. And so, I'm thinking as we look at this from a radial perspective, like I said, many things are coming at us at different times and in different environments. We respond differently. But, it's also true that when we engage this social constructivist view, that we have a more narrow base in which to respond at that deeper conscious level. So we're responding more at an automatic thinking processing level. And then we funnel down into, meta choice, if you will, and ultimately of a conscious choice. And, it's also true that opportunity is not equal all across the board, and so that's something we can't ignore. But the thinking here is that, even though choices are available or may not be based upon these social factors, we still have the choice and ability to think above and beyond the constructs of that social position, so to be able to become more transcendent. And that's the point of engaging choice at a more conscious level. And so, what I'm posing is that if we consciously create choice versus just responding to that constructivist view, so not just constructing choice, we actively create choice, we open the opportunity to transcend social constructs, prejudice, bias, and socially placed limitations. It opens a portal to, operate at a more genuine connection to yourself, or to truly be more authentically who you are. So, initiating this conscious choice affords us a much higher degree of access to be able to apply the levels of choice. So, we can not only invite choice, we can begin to investigate it and ultimately initiate it at all of these various levels of processing. And so, thinking of it this way, the wider the receiver of choice, the more options we're able to connect to choice. And so you can see here we have a much broader base at level 3. So we have a very solid foundation when we operate from that genuine, authentic portion of ourselves. Okay, so we're going to end here. There'll be many more segments following, and I appreciate you joining me today. And thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye now.